Good evening. Call to order the November 7th, 2018 meeting of the Arlington Redevelopment Board, recorded by ACMi. First on our agenda this evening is EDR special permit public hearing for 925, 927 Massachusetts Avenue. Richard Freeman for BF Arlington Properties, LLC. Proponent is here. If you could introduce yourselves and give us an overview of what you're seeking this evening.
Yes. My name is Robert Nessie. I am the attorney for the petitioner, and I have with me Steve Allen, who is the architect, and Mr. Freeman, who is the owner of the property. We are proposing to basically renovate the existing building at 925 to 927 Mass Ave. Now, the building was built in 1900, and quite frankly, I grew up in this town. And I remember that building being in a very deteriorating shape, even when I was a young kid going to high school here. So it's refreshing to have someone like Mr. Freeman come along, who purchased the property a couple of months ago and is willing and prepared to put money into it to renovate it. Right now on the site, we have 3 offices and we have 1 residential unit. What we are proposing to do is to renovate the building, put an addition on it, and Steve is going to talk with you about that. And we're going to maintain 3 office units, commercial units, and we're going to have 3 residential units as well. Now, I mentioned in the app that I filed that we were actually going for a parking relief. I don't believe we need parking relief. I think what you're going to see once the plans evolve, you see them, is that we do comply with parking. Now, I have run this by the building department extensively, okay, for the purpose of determining that we can do what we are here to do. And Mr. Byrne has put his blessing on the approach and indeed has indicated that he likes it. He likes the design that we have. We're going to be clearing up an area that basically, the site itself, that basically is not a very good site. And you'll find that it's a little bit paradoxical that what you have there is you have a property that's in an R5 zone, okay? The surrounding properties are not in an R5 zone. The surrounding properties would be mixed use. We're not mixed use because you don't have mixed use in an R5 zone. So maybe at some point down the line, this property will get rezoned if it's not attacked for being spot zoning into something that puts it in the mixed use category as well. What we're going to do is we're going, if we can get approval, what we're going to do is have 3 office units on the first level, and Steve will explain how that's going to happen, okay? And we're going to have 3 residential on the upper portion. The residential units are going to have 3 bedrooms in each unit. That's what we're actually proposing. We're right next to the Stop and Shop property, so we're not invading a residential area here. This is an area that is commercial in nature, and quite frankly, having examined the master plan, I think this particular property and what we're proposing fits in nicely with the master plan. Why? Because we're going to be offering residential use, we're going to be offering office use, which is mixed use, which I think is what the master plan is all about. So again, on the parking, I think we're going to have sufficient parking. We're going to have 9 spaces in total. We're going to have an additional space for handicap as well. So 10 spaces in total, not just 9. Steve, why don't you go up and show us, if you could, on the site plan where the spaces are going to be.
Thanks, Bob. Yes, so we've been able to get, it's a total of 10 parking spaces, of which one of them is a wheelchair accessible space, which is here. So we have 6 spaces here, compact space here, 4 spaces, wheelchair space with the van accessible, with the appropriate drop-off and approach area around that. So I think the site and design lends itself quite well at getting the 10 spaces, which we're only required to have 7 from our calculations. So we feel real good we were able to get to 10.
Steve, what's the, while you're there, stay. What's the traffic circulation going to be? How are people going to get in and get out of the site?
Well, getting in and out of the site is the existing drive that's there. So it's a 9-foot wide drive. So we're not touching that. So fortunately, we think that the depth here is not such where we think there's going to be a hazard with people. But the lot is what it is, and it's part of the challenge of using existing property. So that's why we're renovating on the existing footprint, and I'll go into detail on what that is. But it is it's a shared drive, so that's what the site accommodates.
Okay, so the traffic circulation is really not going to change, correct?
No.
Okay. With respect to the plans themselves, as far as the addition is concerned, can you show us how the plans are going to work, Steve, for the addition?
That's what I'll do just. So what we're doing is the office spaces will all be on the first level. So this office space 1 occupies the area where essentially today is where this 1 floor space is. Now the way we're approaching this is that we're going to raise this portion of the building, reinforce the foundation, to build the 2-story portion that you saw in the rendering. So the office space on the first will be all first floor office spaces. So this one accesses from the street. This one accesses from the existing stair. The third one accesses from 2 locations, from the rear here, as well as the second means of egress here.
And you've indicated where the office space is on the plan?
Yes, and if you want to know about the additions to the building, the present building, this first floor area.
Show us how it's going to change.
Right. So the first floor area, the boundaries of that existing 1 floor area is in gray here. So that's the existing boundary. So what we're doing, we're putting in 2 additions. One addition fills in this space right now, which is essentially, doesn't show up here, but it basically is kind of a place where people traditionally put trash cans and stuff like that. But we're filling in that space. The second area that the addition occurs is this area here. And that's where you showed the difference between the light gray and dark gray. So where the existing house is here, the addition basically does this kind of L shape on here to be able to get the existing additional square footage.
Yeah. And we're talking, by the way, about a good-sized lot. We have 8,000 square feet plus on the lot. So it's not a tiny, tiny lot. So there's room to work with as far as the site is concerned. Now, with respect to storage and barrels and the like, where is that going to be on the site?
So that storage here is going to take place. We've got areas along here. We've also, there's areas along here as well. So we've got, I think, plenty of area for trash areas on a single file along this area. And so we're able to do that as well as getting in a nice green strip between the stop and shop parking area and the existing building.
And based upon the way you've designed the project, with the traffic circulation not changing in any way, do you anticipate that there'll be any conflict with any of the stop and shop traffic?
There is no there's no conflict because neither the two shall meet. You know, there's, the circulation is unchanged from what exists today.
Are we improving the site in some fashion, Steve, such as, for example, right now, is there any open space on the site?
There's none today. If you drive in here right now, and this area here is completely paved. So what we're doing is we're trying to find, we looked at ways where at least we could adapt some green space. This area is paved as well, so we're creating some green space here along this edge, capturing some area that we can have some green space and plantings, as well as what we have along this east side setback.
And I know, Steve, that you did zoning calculations as well.
Yes.
With respect to your submission. Are we essentially going to be in compliance with the zoning bylaw with respect to what we're proposing?
We are. It was our intention going into this that we were not going to ask for any zoning relief. So things like we calculated FAR, and that was the guideline of which the building was actually shaped. For example, we calculated where we needed a side setback of 12.87 feet. Okay, round up to 13. That 13 foot is right at the corner of this addition. That set the boundary that we had. So this is really about, when we go about designing stuff like this, we really see, what are our boundaries, and trying to meet to those, because that's what we're allowed to do. But again, the intent was to come for you and not to ask for any kind of relief.
Now, creating some new landscaping, is that correct?
Yes.
Show us where that is.
So again, that's on the north side here, but primarily along this east side. This is the boundary between the parking area, Stop and Shop, as well as we're able to cut out the asphalt there and create some green spaces.
And the property is non-conforming, at least with respect to frontage, is that correct?
Well, it's existing non-conforming in terms of the front setback. So that's why what we're doing is we're building on top of the existing foundation to, it's existing non-conforming, we're maintaining that non-conforming.
Okay, anything you'd like to add?
Well, I can go through this. And I'll just say, again, excuse me, and again, just you can tell that the mass of the building here really made for a distinctive retail or a commercial versus what looks more like a residential space. And we felt like that it would be the better approach would be make something where design something where the building itself is more coherent with each other, because the office space has always existed on the first level there. So we just felt like that was a better way to go. So that's why, even though we do things that are needed for commercial spaces along the street, so we have designated insurance agents who have some storefront there. But the fenestration here is designed to be fiber cement siding with appropriate details in terms of trims and rakes and that kind of thing. Asphalt shingles, more of that kind of traditional vernacular. We thought, particularly the fact that we have buildings that are more residential in shape and scale, and all, we just felt like that was the best way to go. One thing we haven't mentioned, but office space being on the first level, then we've configured the 3 units to where there are 2 units on the second level, and because this becomes basically a 2-level portion that's built where the one single floor used to be. So then we're renovating, and we're popping in the dormer area and all to be able to accommodate this 3-bedroom unit 3 that basically sits on top of the main building. So that's the way we were able to do that. Obviously, providing second means of egress, that's done by primarily by this stair, On this unit, if we wanted to connect, we would have had 3 means of egress, but it just worked better to have a rear stair here and the stair here, so that this becomes egress for these two. This is the main internal stairway that's always listed there. This allows us to be able to have bike storage underneath this long stair.
With respect to height,
Yes.
are we exceeding what was there before?
I don't believe we are. I think the main thing is that we stay under the 35-foot height, I believe is, I have to look again.
You're at 33.6 feet.
Thank you. Okay, so the bottom line is I believe 35 is our limit, and we stay under that 35.
All right. And you mentioned bicycle parking. Show us where that's going.
Yeah, so covered bike parking takes place under here. And let me see. I had this just in case we had some questions about that. So this ends up creating a covered area underneath the stair that's accessible here. So it ends up being a great opportunity for covered bike storage.
And we are providing for that, by the way, even though we probably don't have to, because we may not need that parking reduction. I don't believe we do need that parking reduction. But I have in mind the prior hearings, and I have in mind prior comments as well, so we are going to be providing bicycle parking for sure. One added feature about the site is that it's on a major car line, MBTA, that we are going to encourage people in any event, if they have bicycles, to take their bicycles to work if they can, if they're in close proximity to where they work. So we don't believe that we're going to be creating any traffic issues as far as the site is concerned. We do believe that the design that we have is certainly going to fit in well with the master plan. And I have in mind that the master plan is evolving, okay? And the master plan is not going to be, not to come to fruition for some time to come. But we have taken a site at this point that we could not do mixed use with, okay? We've taken a site and we've tried to utilize that site in the best manner we can in terms of taking characteristics of the existing property and adding to it, but not being offensive and intruding into the residential properties behind the building. How about lighting, Steve, in the back?
I'll say a couple things. So we'll have, right now the plan is to have lights that are pole mounted, 12-foot high, sharp cutoff lenses so that there's no spillage to neighbors. It's not as sensitive on the east side because of the parking area, as well as on the north side because of there's access road pavement. But on the west, we really want to be sensitive to that. So anyway, sharp cutoff so that means there's no light spillage that takes place.
I think that's our presentation.
A couple of things.
I'm sorry,
I just thought a couple of things as we were talking. One is that this is we have 3 units here. We're meeting and exceeding the mass energy code for appropriate residential buildings like this. You also see the photovoltaic array that's shown there. So the intention is to be able to size that so it can take the internal common lighting that takes place in the stairways and from an entrance and basement and all, to be able to power that. So that is a opportunity as well as to be able to charge emergency power pack batteries. So being able to use that to the interest there.
Leads.
Excuse me?
L-E-E-D-S.
Leads. Lead. So this takes a lot of the characteristics of lead and incorporates this into the building in terms of the, I think by taking care of providing planting for this. We also looked at the drainage and being able to, we'll be investigating the way in which water is taken from this area so that it can be detained at the right rates. And I think we talked about mass energy code, low flow showers, toilets, kind of things in the plumbing section on lead, low VOC materials is just a given. That's just the way you want to do that. So paints that don't off gas, siding is a fiber cement product that is very natural. Those are the things that I think.
Right. Very good.
Thank you.
Here.
Just have a few questions.
Sure.
Don't see anything on your plans as far as where trash storage might go. Can you point that out? Where they'll be both for the office use and the residential use.
Yeah, so what I envisioned here was that we had an area here and here where you could line up cans here. We have some, have some flexibility. We want to try to keep this as green as we could right at this point, but right here was what we had in mind.
And will you be fencing off the lot lines between the residences on the left and the Stop and Shop parking lot?
There exists, correct me if I'm wrong, there are existing fences here, and I believe
Part of the way down.
okay,
Yeah.
on the left side as well. So.
I never mentioned Mr. Freeman. He's a well-known property owner in town. He owns a Capitol Theater block. He has also just acquired the block up in the Heights, a very large block up in the Heights. And I know he's thinking in terms of perhaps developing that site at some point down the line as well. So again, that all fits in with the evolving master plan that we're talking about.
And then I think the last question I have is if you could just talk to me about the width and access cars will have for that driveway. How do you plan to control that traffic?
Well, I think we're, let's see, where's the best place to see this here? So the yield on the parking today, if you were to go out today and you were to strike the existing parking area, you could get these 10 parking spaces today. In fact, we're actually trimming some, we talked about the fact that we're actually trimming a little bit of pavement because this pavement goes right up. You saw the photograph here that you see pavement going right up to the back of the property as such. So, we've tried to trim some of that, but my point being is that we happen to strike it and come up with 10 spaces. We're not changing what's existed today. And so we feel like, in the sense that the capabilities of parking the same number of cars as you had before is unchanged. The drive is unchanged. And, the drive is what it is. And I said, I think it's 8'4" at the narrowest point here. It's a little wider right here. Well, we feel like the depth here is sufficient where somebody could get in if they needed to. Somebody could back up. That's the way that things have worked ever since this has been built. We have a wider area. We use it. We don't. It doesn't seem to have been a problem since the building's been.
Well, my concern there is only that you're at 2 residential units, which
Sure.
would theoretically add people, if not necessarily cars, which would impact the use on the driveway. But I see the limitations of the lot there. Thank you. Mike? Ken?
Well, I want to start off by saying I like the project. It's adding residential in a little business area, which is good with the master plan. I think that's what we're looking for. I think it's a good way of right about re-energizing an existing building. With that said, I'm just echoing some of the comments now, so don't think it's so bad. You have 10 parking spaces here right now. I don't think 2 of the parking spaces will work.
Okay.
The ones you have at the 2 corners there, right at the corner that surrounds the grass area there,
Are you talking about
that one,
that one?
and then the other one there. Okay?
Okay.
All those spaces are at an angle and they come into each other, okay? If a guy does not park all the way in, he's gonna hit the other guy coming out. There's not enough space there for that to happen because it's tapering in where his backup space is. And I don't think Arlington recognizes compact spaces.
Okay.
Is that true, Jenny?
No, we can have compact spaces.
We do.
There is
There-
a
there is
dimensional
that. That
requirement
is
for it?
allowable, yes.
We do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I can speak to that, then I think what you could do, we obviously have more parking than what we need. You could, since this is compact space, you want to, if you feel like this really doesn't work, if this was to be green space, then I think very clearly that would allow this space to work. So if what you're saying is, let's cut one space out to make all of them work better, I think you have the ability to do that and still be in compliance.
That would be my encouragement, and I might, in fact, not delete that one, but delete the compact space. And if you can move the whole line of spaces down and create more green space, a buffer zone along the edge of the fence, so the parking space is not quite against the fence, but you give it maybe a couple of feet of buffer. You know, so yes, but get out of 9 spaces.
Got it. Yeah.
Get a strip of buffer right around there, okay? Because I know in wintertime, when the guy plows the snow, he's just going to push it right back there. He's going to buffer right against that fence there, okay? Those spaces are getting shorter and shorter as it goes along, okay? And you're not going to get anything. So if you sort of recognize that a little bit, give it a little more space, I'm okay with that, okay?
We can work with it.
Okay.
Good.
The other thing is, you're building on top of the existing building up front. Okay? I applaud the architecture you got right now, the gables and everything else, the overhangs, but the corner of the building is right on the property line,
The corner of the building, which
right down the bottom there.
you're talking about here?
Yes.
Because that's the existing
Yes,
condition that
and you can do that. There's no setbacks in it, that's fine. But your overhang is over the property line, on the roof.
Okay.
I noticed some allowances to do that on the public side, but your overhang stop and shop's property now.
Okay, let's look, we will look closer at that detail. I hear what you're saying, and if we need
I mean, you already have this
adjustment.
little thing set there. If you just slid that thing over a little more and don't have the, on your sketch model, it shows that roof line all the way lining up. If you slid over a little bit, then the overhang doesn't overhang the property.
And it may not take much to be able to make that adjustment.
I just want to say that could be a problem later on.
Sure, got it.
You know, Mike Burns might say, hey, you know, you're over.
Appreciate that.
Okay, so, but now, I know what you said, you can use on the new addition, the green is going to be all cement siding. What about your vinyl siding you have all over the other building? Is that going to stay, or are you going to reclad the rest of the building?
The rest of the building needs to be reclad, or else it's just not going to work.
That's fine, it's just a question,
Yeah.
and I think that's great. I think recladding the whole building with cement board? Or
That was the plan.
Okay, so it's not vinyl
We
siding.
could use, we haven't talked in great detail, but there are options we could do. Vinyl siding, fiber cement, clapboard could be done, but in cases like this, fiber cement is used quite often.
Yeah, I don't mind that, it's just that I just don't want, you know, all the white behind it to be all vinyl siding. I think that just looks awkward when you have this nice building.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Good.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm asking you to do brick or anything, you know. I'm not going to touch the bicycle parking because I know my friend here is going to much more expert at that than me. I'll let Andy talk a little more about the look of further, but I think I'm done for now. Okay, thank you.
Looks like a good project. You guys had a lot of my questions about the driveway, the trash. You're going to have to manage that driveway somehow. I understand that it's an existing condition, but now you got 3 office units and the residences. It would be good if you kind of figured out a way, I don't know whether it's marking the way the pavement is given texture or you know, different type of paving, a mirror that you might have to have right at that.
You took the words out of my mouth, because I've seen that in similar situations where...
But you want to plan ahead, because there's going to be a condition where somebody's stopped and has to back out, and then you don't want to endanger any pedestrians or anything. So there has to be some kind of way that you really positively manage it. I almost thought there would be a gate there, but that would not open unless you know, somebody stopped, waited and looked for pedestrians and then backed out. That's what worries me a little bit.
I would hope that if you had a conflict, you don't want the person that's closest to Mass Ave to be moving.
Yes.
You don't want the person, you don't want to back out.
Right. Yeah, I'm not worried about people coming forward out because they can see where they're going. It's the person that has to back out.
Oh, totally agree with you.
He stopped. He has to back out because somebody's come too far forward.
Yeah.
What's going to protect people, the pedestrians from that kind of backing? Is there enough visibility? Is there a gate there that somehow could be activated? I don't know. That seems like a little bit too much, but I'd like to see you guys kind of talk it through with building inspector.
Be more than happy to.
Yeah, we can look at that.
So that you've taken measures at the beginning to make sure nothing happens.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's okay. I think that's basically it. You guys covered the other items.
Thanks. David?
I think this is a significant improvement over the current structure on the site. So that's very positive. Could you talk a little bit about how is the existing structure configured now? Because I think it says it has 3 office units and 1 residential space currently.
And I think what happens right now is that the office space, you have 1 office space here. You have the 2nd office space in this section. I think the 3rd office space is actually above in this area here, and this is where the residential is. So it's not the best situation there. That's what exists today. But I think that's right.
So some of the office use is in that rear structure already?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you're adding some green space. Do you have a plan for irrigation and for ongoing maintenance of the green space so it doesn't just die?
Landscape.
Right, that's what I was going to say. I know there was a landscape plan that was submitted as part of the package, and landscape architect's not here to speak on that, but there's not a in-ground irrigation system planned, but I think we're thinking this with the size and that could be handled just from surface watering. Just because it's not a huge site, but that's what you're thinking.
Yeah, I just encourage you to think that through, because it would be a shame to add what little green space you can on this lot and then have it not last. Yeah, I saw the plan.
Yeah, it's the last document.
Natural, with regional planning, where it doesn't require irrigation.
Okay.
If they're trying to go for LEED certified.
Well, I was about to say, thank you. I actually wasn't thinking that step. Yeah, it's right. What you do, it allows you to water for the first 2 years, and if you really want to have a drought-resistant plantings, so you don't have to do them.
Okay, that makes sense. So I will ask a little bit more about the bike parking. I appreciated being in there and do appreciate it being covered. But I'd like to ask whether it's feasible to also make it secure. And that is really a necessary element in a residential building where people would be parking their bikes overnight, particularly in such a high traffic location like this where there's a lot of people going by the building, even though it's at the back. But that may actually make it more vulnerable because it's not visible from the street. So you wouldn't know if anyone was back there.
Yeah. We can look at how we might be able to enclose this portion of the stairway there to be able to give some security. I'm not sure exactly how we do it, but we'll take a look at that.
Yeah, I guarantee that people with bikes would appreciate that, because otherwise, rather than using that space, they're more likely to want to bring the bikes up into their units.
Is there, along those lines, is there a basement? Is there a basement storage possibility?
There are basements here, and we haven't talked in terms of the storage, to be honest. I know that, and part of it's because we haven't laid out mechanical systems, and I really don't know, once that's done with water heaters, I don't know what we're going to have left on that. So, are you thinking that in terms of just internal bike storage?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a possibility. I think the other thing, I guess there are two ways you could look at bike storage. One is, do you have a place with racks and all that under in that covered area so that you walk to the rack, or do you also secure the area with a gate, like you're saying? Maybe it's both.
I would suggest both.
Because
that way you're securing your bike both against other people who have access to that space and against people who shouldn't have access to that space. And I do like that you're dealing with it at ground level, because that's very preferable to putting it in the basement or having people carry their bikes upstairs into their units. But it would be significantly better if it were also secure.
Anything else, Sue?
No, I think that was it.
Gene?
I agree this is a great improvement over the current property, which I've always considered pretty much an eyesore. I think this is a great improvement. I have a couple questions related to the bicycle parking also. Is the intent that it just be for the residences and not for the offices?
yeah, but it asks us if it was intended to be for residences and offices. Capacity right now is probably for the residents and all.
I wondered what the capacity was. How many bicycles are going to fit in?
Now, right now, I think, I haven't laid it all out. I think we're running about 4 bikes in that area there.
Yeah, I don't think that's enough. David may disagree with me,
No,
but
I
I
don't.
think we probably need at least 6.
Okay.
So there's the potential to get 3-bedroom units. And by the way, I applaud you creating 3-bedroom units. We don't see that many, but I think...
And we can talk in terms of hanging as well.
Well, yeah, I think it's
And
just
that creates-
capacity for
Yeah.
6 in a secure
Sure.
location, as David talked about, would be ideal or preferable.
Yeah, we've got opportunities for design.
And what about adding one on the foot guest parking for the office?
Yeah, I think for the offices, having something on the outside of the building would be fine.
A rack.
Yeah, like regular
We could do that.
bike rack. But you still may have people who want to bring their bikes inside the building, so I wouldn't want to prohibit them from.
I think I'm hearing that we should be doing both, and thinking of doing both.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I don't know that you need to provide separate secure bike parking for the office tenants outside of their office space. But I would certainly not prohibit them from bringing bicycles into the building if they chose to. But it would certainly be good to provide some outside parking, both for employees and for visitors who might bike there.
My colleagues raised all the other issues as the mayor, so that's it.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Thanks, Andrew. So I just wanted to say first, I've been working with this applicant for a number of months now, and where we began and where we are tonight is quite a stretch. We started actually with thinking about this as mixed use, which of course is not actually allowed in R5, as you probably know. And then sort of journeyed into this discussion about ways to improve the front of the site. So, you know, as noted in the memo that's provided to you tonight, we didn't have any concerns or additional comments. There's just one small error in this application that I wanted to point out, which is in the zoning analysis. The frontage that's actually required is 20 feet. I think it says 13 or something like that. 12 feet. It's technically 20. It is a nonconformity. But other than that, I just wanted to state that I've been working with this applicant, and that was it.
Thank you. No, that's right. Thank you. So if there are no other questions from board members, I'll open it up for public comment. Please only discuss the application at hand here. Raise your hand. I will call on you. Please address questions to the board, and then I will ask the appropriate party to answer if need be. State your name and address, and we'll move on. Comment. Mr. Loretti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Loretti, 56 Adams Street. First, I just have a question. What's the square footage of the office space in total?
I'm not sure I can answer that right now.
It's, it says in your application
It's
that
in the
it's 2626.
Thank you.
So 2,626.
Right.
Square feet.
Yeah, I guess I have a few questions, more comments than questions. We just said that the facility doesn't, or the proposal doesn't conform with the front yard setback requirements. Based on some comments I heard earlier, it may not comply with the side yard setback requirement either. How is adding a second story not increasing the nonconformity to that front part of the building?
Building inspector has indicated we're not, okay? We would not be here if in fact he concluded that we were increasing the nonconformity.
Do we have anything in writing from the building
No, we
inspector?
don't, and we never have anything in writing from the building inspector.
Is that why I have like private investigators coming to my house saying they're investigating the zoning enforcement in this town?
That's wildly out of scope, Mr. Loretti.
The other thing I would like to inquire about, and frankly, let me raise one additional point about that. You do get an exception for a 1 or 2 family home if you're building within the footprint. This is not a 1 or 2 family home, so that exception does not apply. It's quite clear when you read the bylaw that this is an increase in the nonconformity, okay? And that's not allowed. The other question I have is, have you provided any evidence, been provided any evidence that the total lack of usable open space existed prior to the 1975 zoning bylaw requiring that usable open space?
What's your question? I'm losing you. What's your question?
The site as it exists now and as proposed has no usable open space.
Correct.
Did it have no usable open space prior to the zoning bylaw requirement that for the usable open space in the R5 zoning district, which was passed, I believe, in 1975 or sometime thereabout?
Mr. Hesse, you can answer that.
Pardon?
You can answer that.
All right, the building was built in 1900. The configuration of the building on the site has not changed.
The question is not pertaining to the building, it's pertaining to the usable open space. Can I give you an example, Mr. Chairman? I own a two-family home. If I add an illegal apartment into that home, I can't go before the board and then ask for a special permit for a 3-unit condominium. And it doesn't matter if that illegal apartment existed in my home when I bought it 25 years ago. It was illegal then. The situation with the usable open space is that you've got a lot that's virtually completely paved over. When did that happen? Did it happen after 1975? Because if the lot complied with the usable open space requirements in 1975, you can't go back and say, well, when this current owner bought it, it didn't have that. You've got to go back to what the compliance status was back when the bylaw changed in 1975.
The bottom line, Mr. Loretti, is that we are creating open space which does not now exist on the site. We are creating, I think it's 481 square feet of landscaped open space on the site now.
Yeah, but that, I understand that, but that's not my question. The question is
I'm telling
compliance
I'm telling
with
you
the
what we're
usable
proposing.
open space requirement. Now,
The question is, do we have the knowledge of whether that the usable open space requirement has in the 1975 bylaw?
it's really, is it
I haven't
a,
knowledge on it, because we haven't researched that.
The building inspector
Did see
never brought it up
research.
as an issue, okay? With the 4 to 5 meetings we've had with him, okay? So,
Thank you.
I mean, that really is the question, because it's not whether it's non-conforming. We all acknowledge that it's non-conforming. Is it a legally non-conforming situation? And that's the issue. And I would, in relation to that, it seems that as the architect acknowledged, the parking is excessive. And that's why I asked about the number of space, the size of the office space, because if you assume, as the bylaw suggests, 1 space per 500 square feet, you need 5 for the office, and then 1 per unit. You're at least, 8 spaces would be required. Your board is entitled to grant far less than that under both the recent bylaw changes and older bylaw changes. I would suggest you really need to cut down on the parking, which is in conformance with the master plan to reduce automobile use, which you seem to like in some situations. I think you should apply that here as well. And then my only final comment is, in looking at the materials that were posted on the website, I saw a lead scorecard. I didn't see any description of how those elements were met and to give the number of points that were arrived at. And I would hope that you get that before you make your vote on this project, and also that you get something in writing about what the materials of construction are, in particular for the cladding of the buildings, as one of your members brought up. I think that's something that you ought to have in the written application.
we have submitted,
Before acting upon it, that is very clear about exactly what
we
the
have
materials are
submitted
throughout.
documents with respect to section 10.11 with regard to each of the 7 items, okay? We have given, I think, more information than we had to with respect to the elements that we need to satisfy. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Roy. Other public comments, questions, concerns? I will close public comment, bring the discussion back to the board. Jim?
I'm going to be satisfied with the answers that were given. But I just want to clarify, we agree that we're going to use one of the parking spaces and try to look at creating a softer edge along the fence there. We have also said that we're going to put some sort of enclosure for the bicycle parking. And we'll also look at the overhang at the front, at the corner of the property there. With that said, I think I'm very satisfied with the comments back and feedback so far.
I guess you're right. Andy?
And I would just add to those conditions, the management of the driveway. They plan
Yes.
to make safety in that driveway backing out.
David?
I was trying to bring up the parking section of the bylaw, but if we do the minimum calculation for the number of parking spaces, where are we at?
8.
So we could remove 2.
We've lost one, so we're at 9 now by agreement. We could actually have them reduce one further parking space and add in
But-
more green space.
But if they do what Ken is saying, they may lose another one.
Yeah.
Because they've got to put a buffer in and so forth. So we could say, maybe, so
I think I'd be satisfied with that.
You could say you could lose up to 2. Well, let you finish, excuse me.
Yeah, I think if they're going to explore putting some additional buffer space in, I think we need to see what that does to the square footage that's available. But I think it would be preferable to reduce it one further if it's feasible.
And by looking at the proportions there, basically backup space for a double loaded parking is like 22 feet or 24 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Ranges from those two numbers there, and parking space is 18 feet deep there, so I'm sure they have more than enough.
I think there's enough room.
Space there for turnaround. That's not a concern based on what I see on that.
More than that.
Do you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think, given the location of this building and the opportunities for transportation other than single occupancy vehicles, that this would be a good opportunity to minimize parking and minimize paved area.
I'd agree. Gene?
I think, I agree with what's been said. The only thing I'll add is it would be helpful to see how the stormwater is going to be handled at some point.
Can you address the stormwater management plan, please?
We do not have that presently. We know we have to do that.
No, and that's requirement of the engineering department.
So you would hire an engineer to figure out a stormwater management system, and that would happen underneath the paved parking lot.
Right.
Okay. So I'll leave it up to the board if there's any further discussion. Choose to move to a vote. We can ask the applicant to provide us more information and come back on another date, depending on how the rest of the board feels.
I'm ready to vote. I don't know, David, are you satisfied with parking, or do you want to?
I think with appropriate conditions and working with the department, that might be okay.
To reduce the number of spaces?
Well, and also enhancing the bike parking as we discussed.
Yeah, I was putting in secure parking for 6 bikes, basically. That's where we landed, I think.
As well as exterior bike rack for the office space.
Okay, and exterior.
And increasing the landscape buffer
Yeah,
If possible.
with the potential of losing up to 2 spaces.
Yeah.
up to 2?
Yeah.
Okay,
1 or 2 spaces.
Yeah, yeah, we could say up to 2.
up to 2.
And then I think any final materials choice would be reviewed with the department.
Yeah,
It's a pretty typical condition that we put in.
yes.
So, given those conditions, entertain a motion.
So motion.
Did you pick up the conditions that Ken had?
I'll rate them to you if you'd like. I mean,
Yeah.
these are,
Yeah.
in a rough format, and you can tell me if I missed something. Sort of increased buffer along the fence, I believe, is where you were talking about in the back, which may lead to a loss of up to 2 parking spaces, and to work in general on reduction of parking on site, to manage driveway safety and provide a plan as such, secure parking for 6 bikes, and installation of exterior rack for business use, addressing the overhang on the lot corner edge by Stop and Shop. I'm forgetting the address over there. I'll note that. Addressing the stormwater management plan as a follow-up with town engineer, and final material review by the department.
Right, except that the bike was a preference for there being interior We're enclosed by parking, wasn't it?
For the residents.
Yeah, secure parking for 6 bikes. That's
Secure
resident.
secure and enclosed.
Secure and enclosed, okay.
Yeah.
For residential use only.
Minimum of 6 bicycles.
And when you're reviewing materials, it's the finishes for the whole building.
Yeah.
Not just the front.
Right.
Yeah, entire project.
Okay.
So motion? Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you, gentlemen.
Congratulations, good project.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny, for your help.
Seeing its final form, thank you.
Yes.
Pause for a second. Start.
So that's what Jenny sets up, that hearing is now closed. There we go.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. No, it's all just.
Yeah, no, just take it. Thank you again.
Good night. Yeah, we just have to, just take a moment to start. This is a zoning bylaw, if anybody is unable to pull it up for some reason, by the way. I always
I
have
had
it
a
with me.
technology failure.
Yeah.
No, I'm good for the moment.
Nice road opening.
It's fine. As long as it's clear that there are two signatures there. Nobody's as legible as they do.
So we should.
Well, that was good.
The study can go, but I also wanted to make some comments tonight.
Okay. Can we get just a minute here? Okay. All right, moving on to second item on our agenda this evening, which is the continued public hearing regarding the zoning bylaw amendment, medical and recreational marijuana establishments. I did indicate at our hearing Monday night that I would allow for additional public comment period. We received one question from Chris Loretti regarding the use of retail in an industrial zone. So we'll note that is received along with a response from town council. Also was received, and we can have that entered into the record. If there's any additional public comment, I will allow that beginning now. Please, usual ground rules apply. We're only here to discuss zoning. The article before us, raise your hand and I will call on you. Please state your name and address for our record and then speak your piece. So I'll allow for that this time. Sister.
John Gersh, Kipling Road. The reason I'm here is because I feel like this 20% number has got my attention. It seems drastic and punitive, and it seems like it would tend to kill any real industry or compliance with state, the state vote on marijuana, to kill it in its cradle. I feel like this is extreme and kind of overreaching, and that's my comment for you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Can I just add a couple? And thank you for mentioning the correspondence with Town Council. And what he did confirm is that currently retail is not allowed in the industrial zone, except under the limited circumstances where you have a manufacturer that's selling the goods they manufacture within the zone, and that applies to anything. And saying that something's mixed use doesn't allow you to get around that. That really confirms what I said previously and emphasizes my opinion that it doesn't make any sense to allow retail marijuana sales in the industrial zone when you don't allow retail sales of anything else in that zone, provided the thing's not manufactured there. It seems a very strange precedent to set, and I do appreciate the work that the Marijuana Study Committee did, but I suspect they weren't familiar with sort of the traditions and the regulations as they applied to the industrial zone for retail sales. Certainly the other types of activities that are envisioned for marijuana facilities in that zone seem appropriate if there is production or research or that sort of processing. That's what happens in an industrial zone. But in our town, we have not traditionally allowed retail in the industrial zone, and I believe that should be preserved. And then related to Mr. Gersh's point, just a question on the buffer zones. If I understand right, the buffer zones are the same or similar for both medical and recreational marijuana. And I was not aware that towns could make the buffer zones for recreational marijuana more stringent than they are in state law. If you haven't already looked into that, I suggest you do so, because I'm not sure you actually can. And there were some additional categories of buffer zones created that I believe applied also to recreational marijuana. Now, I'm no expert on this, I could well be wrong, but that may be something to check into.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Argett, I know you were on the study committee. If you had comments or concerns to voice to the board this evening.
I'm happy to give a more detailed explanation as to how we arrived at the language for the buffer zones, if that would be helpful to the board as well as to other community members here. We started off essentially, it was a very detailed discussion, we started off essentially by looking at other municipalities who've had marijuana use in place since 2016. And I have some details here that I'm happy to share. Now, while it was discussed that you cannot extend the buffer zone around schools, public and private schools, K through 12, beyond 500 feet, it is very clear that you can have special use buffer zones. So we started off by reviewing Washington State, where they've had recreational marijuana sales since 2016. The language in their zoning amendment was 1,000 feet around playgrounds, recreational centres, facilities, childcare centres, public parks, public transit centres, libraries and gaming arcades under the age of 21. We then reeled it in a little more to take into consideration what Massachusetts state regulations are. And then took an opportunity to be able to see what some of the neighbouring municipalities have done in terms of their zoning regulations. And it was very, very interesting to note that many of our neighbours actually voted no on recreational marijuana use, so we're kind of sitting as a little bit of a beacon. Specifically, some of our abutters included Belmont. I've actually got a map here which I'm happy to share with folk. You most probably can't see, but we have the state of Massachusetts, and we're surrounded by many known municipalities. So it's Burlington, Bedford, Lexington, Winchester, Stoneham, Reading, Wakefield, Saugus, Linfield, Peabody and Danvers are all no communities. So we're a yes community, and obviously to try and balance out having recreational marijuana use and establishments in town that are going to be successful while still protecting the youth of Arlington where there is great concern. We turned our attention to the regulations of Cambridge. And interestingly enough, Cambridge regulations are the standard 500-foot buffer around private and public schools. And then there's a 500-foot pre-existing buffer around playgrounds, youth athletic fields and youth recreational centres. In Salem, they have recognised that recreational marijuana use is of concern to youth, and they actually have a 1,000-foot buffer zone around higher educational colleges, particularly obviously Salem State University. They also have a 500-foot buffer zone around funeral homes and churches. Somerville is a 500-foot standard buffer zone, and they hadn't, at the time when the committee met, they hadn't released their regulations. So really taking into consideration all of this data and reviewing everything, we came up with the buffer zones that have been presented and detailed in the language that's currently exists in the zoning amendment. So it wasn't just some arbitrary numbers that were discussed. And the one thing I would like to state is there is a reason why there was a lot of discussion around the libraries, particularly the Robbins Library, and that is because it has a dedicated teen centre within the library, so there's a dedicated teen librarian. There's an area of the library that is restricted for teen use only, and it's very much a meeting spot for a teen to congregate. So we thought that was very important to preserve that and to, at the same time to be able to protect that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If there's no other public comment, I will close public comment on this item and turn it back to the board for deliberation. Yes.
So we posted on the, I noticed you're looking at the one from the other night, Ken, but we posted in the Novus agenda because everything was very late in the day, but we have all of the comments combined, all the edits to address the issues that were raised on Monday evening is posted in the Novus agenda. So you should be able to look at the document that I have on the screen right now, which is a track changes version of that document that captures your comments. We also received specific edits from David and Jean. And then Erin and I also addressed some of the other comments that came up during the meeting, but again, specific edits.
So you're saying I don't have to update one?
Well, it looked like you were looking at one that said October 17th.
Yes. So if I downloaded this afternoon.
Yeah, the download from this afternoon, it was fairly recent, unfortunately. We only got the rest of the edits towards the end of the day.
I thought this is the download from this afternoon.
From this afternoon?
Yeah.
Yeah, pull this up.
It says
Does it have my
10:07 there.
I know, but does it have the? Can you see these comments on the side? No.
No.
Can you go back to if you go back to in there and do like the online agenda, not the PDF version, that might be the way to see it. So if you go into minutes and agenda, sorry, just one moment while we figure this out. So we're all looking at the same thing.
Make sure we have more stuff to page.
Yeah, click on
So
online agenda, not download
Okay,
agenda. Yeah, that'll bring you to,
Okay.
click on the public hearing, and then that'll bring you to documents. There we go. So the one that says 11/6 revised for hearing, that's the one you want to open.
I didn't see that either.
Yeah,
All right.
there we go. That's right. Okay, sorry, yeah, that was loaded. We had it late don't have it, I have it on the screen.
So as far as substantive changes to this, are we looking at anything that would materially change what we have
Yeah.
to discuss the other night? Or are we
Yes.
looking at
One-
wordsmithing and typographical?
No, I'll walk through it if
Okay.
you wouldn't mind. The first thing is that we noted is we actually need to strike from the current, so the current bylaw has a definition for recreational marijuana establishment because we had to have the marijuana moratorium, so we already had that language, but we want to delete it from the bylaw and then add all these new definitions. So we actually didn't have that in there. So I added that amend section 2 definitions to strike the existing definition. So that's new. And then, one sec. We added the point about off-site delivery in the marijuana retailer. I would consider that substantive. I know it was being specific, but
Yeah. Well, that was
it is
something
definitely
we
changed.
discussed.
We did
Jen-
discuss it. Yep.
Jenny,
Yeah.
can I just back you up?
Oh, yeah.
In the marijuana use definition, it looks like you made some changes to conform things to the tables.
Yeah, we just said, as described, yeah, see what it means. See marijuana cultivator.
Yeah.
That was as a reference, yeah. I was just going to highlight the things that are substantive, not walk through every single change, sorry. So that, like, a thing that we didn't talk about the other night was the definitions and needing to strike that existing definition, adding off-site. Then we amended the marijuana production facility to address the issue of the co-location. But we actually, I think the word both was throwing everything off in that definition. And so we've decided to strike that word.
Does co-located have one L or two?
It's probably one. Otherwise, it's collocated,
Yeah.
which probably is, is not a word. I mean, it might be, but it's late. So striking both and adding that. And then,
Sorry, Jen, what page are you on now?
well, now I'm on page 5. Because the only two other things that we talked about that were somewhat more substantive related to location. And that was now I'm on page 6. It's the special regulations under location, B3. This one was quite confusing, but what I think we intended was a marijuana retailer shall not be permitted within 2,000 feet of another marijuana retailer, instead of including or medical marijuana treatment center. So we struck or medical marijuana treatment center from both of those clauses.
So we
And
would allow, so this
so
would
it's-
allow two treatment centers to.
It would, yeah, the co-location thing, it was in conflict with that earlier.
But what this would allow with the changes would allow two treatment centers to be within 5 feet of each other.
I mean,
Now all we're
maybe,
doing is prohibiting
but
the
unlikely.
retailers from being within 2,000 feet.
But if you go back to A5, which is what started this, A5, so it's general
Right.
5. The prompt was the issue of where they could be located.
Right, but what I'm saying is the way you've written it now,
Mhm.
two marijuana treatment facilities could be next door to each other.
Well, then, do you want to add a separate
Well,
thing
that's what
just about?
That's what I had given you that isn't in here, which was, it would have said, well, I don't have what I've given you in front of me, but I think it would have said, a marijuana retailer shall not be permitted within 2,000 feet of another marijuana retailer, semicolon, and then a marijuana treatment facility or whatever medical marijuana treatment center may not be permitted within 2,000 feet of another
Oh,
medical
so you were just
marijuana
saying,
treatment center,
repeating the same.
except with the other type of entities, so that, because without it, we could have two treatment centers located next to each other. I don't think that's our intent.
No, I don't think that's our intent, is
Yeah,
to have them
Right, so
be
then
able
we
to
need
look
to
in the same
add the
building or
second,
across the street
we
from one
need to
another.
have the second clause back that says.
I guess so, but the thing is that this is just about retail. It's not about any other marijuana establishment, so I'm not sure why we've singled out medical marijuana treatment centers.
I
So
thought
this
that
is
was
just
about
about the retailer.
storefronts, though.
Right,
Yeah,
storefront.
exactly.
Those are the two types of storefronts, so,
Dr.
I thought treatment centers don't have storefronts.
well, they do, because you gotta get in and, go buy the stuff.
They could.
I thought treatment centers had to be in a building that has a lobby.
Like a doctor's office.
Yes, not a retail storefront where they would.
Right, they're not meant to.
I don't think that, I think that's what, my understanding.
No, my memory is similar, that it is supposed to be treated as a medical facility and not as a retail facility akin to the package store.
Yeah.
Or
So are we okay with having two of them on the same block? Because if we are, this is fine. If we're not, then this is not.
well, that's two discussions to have, because they're not supposed to be a retail store, but are we okay with two on the same block?
Two treatment centers on the same.
I think we should have that discussion.
Comment from
We'll come back to you in just a moment. Are we okay with having the one on Water Street and then potentially one in the same building, where you're increasing risk and security concerns, foot traffic, et cetera? If that's a concern that we have, then I think we should add this language in. If the five of us agree that we're comfortable with that, then we can leave it as is.
Exactly.
But we know right now, just based on just that example, if I might, the 11 Water Street, the buffer zones wouldn't allow for any
Well-
further, so you wouldn't have one next door to that.
So if we found the
retail.
ideal spot, because marijuana treatment centers aren't limited by the limit that we're discussing.
Water Street.
So Water Street's down here, we could certainly have one up here in the Heights that fit the zoning requirements, and could certainly have one next to the other.
Well-
Or, in
Well, here,
other
a more
ones.
extreme example would be, what if every office in that building on Water Street wanted to be a treatment center?
Yeah.
It still would have the same situation where actually, once these rules are adopted, that buffer actually creates a problem for any further, location of
Why?
these establishments.
Oh, so Water Street is grandfathered? Is that what you're
Right.
saying?
Yeah, because, well, if we approve the library buffer zone,
Right,
that zones out
that
that
is the key.
spot.
Okay.
Well, that's
It's been permitted, but that's a specific site. I think there are other sites in town where a medical marijuana treatment center might want to potentially locate. And would we be comfortable as a town having another locate in the same building across the street, next door, within some defined buffer?
Next door to what?
Next door to an existing one.
Did the study group discuss this specific issue? And if so, I'd like to know what they thought.
Dr. Arvid, if you could shed some light on that discussion.
So my recollection of the discussions was the intention was that a marijuana dispensary, whether it be recreational or medical, with the understanding that they may co-locate, would not be within 2,000 feet of another medical marijuana dispensary, whether it be recreational or medical.
So other than a co-located facility, there would not be a situation where there was a marijuana retailer within 2,000 feet of either another retailer or a treatment center.
That's my understanding.
See, I think that doesn't make a lot of sense if we allow co-location, Because if we allow co-location here, then in another part of town, why wouldn't we allow one to be in a storefront next to the building that has the other?
Yes.
So.
Yeah, I don't think I have necessarily an issue with a retail location next to a treatment center. I think they serve a different clientele. But I think the 2,000-foot buffer between retail establishments is reasonable. I also, Jenny or Dr. Ivey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I also remember that the representative from the Mass Patient Foundation said that the likelihood, the practicality of opening another medical treatment center was slim to none,
Unlikely.
given that clientele.
That was what was stated to us by that particular facility. I don't know, other than that statement, I don't have any other evidence that that is.
I think the reasoning is that the way they can present their goods is more cost effective if it's a retail establishment as opposed to a medical establishment. And now that retail establishments are allowed, medical establishments are becoming less and less necessary. Unfortunately, they're not here to back that up, but that's my recollection.
So where does that lead us to? Do we want to have a buffer between the medical establishments in the event that a second one did want to locate in town?
Leave that up to the rest of you.
I would establish the same buffer for medical ones that we've established or proposing to establish for the retailers.
I would agree with you, because it's the same thing. I mean, if you were going to sell marijuana, it's easier and more productive, more profitable to sell it as a recreational than medical. And just in the medical, you can still buy from recreational, right? I mean, you don't necessarily need a...
No, because now that you will be allowed to purchase from a recreational shop, you don't need a license. And
So it makes it mute.
That. Exactly. And that was their testimony or their position.
I think we should hold fast the 2,000 for both.
I'm kind of getting what you're saying. You're saying that they're going to phase out medical marijuana.
I think that's the plan.
Yeah, that is.
Now I understand.
That's why they're coming
That's
to
what
the
you're saying.
umbrella.
Convert over
Yeah.
to the medical one that's there now, will immediately convert
So
to
you want to,
recreational.
so it simplifies it,
Not
actually,
without coming
what
back
you're
to the
saying.
board.
Yeah.
Just keep it at the 2,000 feet.
I think
For both.
For both.
Yeah.
So then,
So we would need, so what
But
I
then we need
gave you
your
before
language,
was
yeah.
that language.
Yeah. So I think we're all in agreement on that, and we can put some form of that into the final document.
I had given Jenny.
yeah, you did give me
Okay.
I just don't have that right in front of me right
Okay.
now. So it's like, it was essentially like two separate sentences.
Well, there were
Yeah,
two clauses
Right.
separated by a semicolon.
yeah. I'll find it.
Okay.
I'm going to highlight it right
Yeah, I think we can get to that. So moving on, was that the last substantive change?
Yeah.
Well, did we want to
Yeah.
discuss the 20%?
Yeah.
We're
No,
going
I-
to.
yeah.
No,
Yeah,
that's
that's
next to
like a
discuss.
separate
I just want to make sure that we're done with the
Other
red
than
lines
that stuff,
that
though,
we
no.
all saw. So I know that Mr. Gersh brought it up,
I-
and I know that Gene is concerned about the 20%.
There was one small thing that may have been missed from the edits I sent Jenny, and it was under general,
Yeah,
number 2. Yeah, on page 6 still.
Yeah.
I had added the word use after medical because it just doesn't make sense otherwise.
Can you read that sentence?
Right now,
oh,
it's,
medical use or I see, yeah,
Yeah.
medical use, non-medical use, yep.
yeah,
Okay, or both,
yeah.
I
Oh,
understand.
medical use
Yeah.
or non-medical use.
Got it,
Got it, that makes sense.
Use, yeah.
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
So the scan very well.
All right, so let's go to the discussion of the cap and the number of special permits for retailers, which is currently proposed to be tied to liquor licenses in town.
Yeah,
So Gene, I know you have some comments if you want.
So I've actually thought about this a lot, and I know that we took a look at the state law, and the state law also uses the 20% of liquor licenses. But I don't see any rational basis.
As a floor.
As a floor, which means you can do more, but you can't do less. I don't see any rational basis any rational nexus between the number of medical marijuana retailers and the number of liquor licenses in the town. I just don't see it, and I know it's in the state law, and I just think the state law therefore is vulnerable on that point. And I think that we're vulnerable on that point because there has to be a rational reason to set the number.
I thought you just said it was the floor for 20%.
It is the floor. So here's my suggestion. My suggestion is that we just say that we shall not grant a special permit. Doing so would result in a total number of marijuana resale licenses to exceed 3, period. And the reason I chose 3 is for 2 reasons. One is, I'm not sure there'll end up being 3 in town, but we sort of have 3 commercial nodes in town. The Heights, the Center, and East Arlington, the capital area. And at least if the zoning would allow, you could theoretically have one in each of the 3 areas of town, which makes sense to me. Second is, since we're limited to the 20%, the town would have to have more than 15 liquor licenses, which is highly unlikely before we would have to do more than 3. So, and if that ever happened, somebody could just amend the bylaw to be consistent. So I would just say that exceed 3, period. That's my proposal.
The way I read the state law, it was setting that 20% of liquor licenses as a minimum.
Minimum, right.
Yeah.
Whereas
as well
we're
as.
using it as a maximum.
Right, and I want to get rid of it altogether and just say 3.
I was going to say if we want to have some consistency with the state law, we don't have to get rid of it completely, but we could use it as a minimum the same way
If
it
you
does,
apply it the
and
same
set a limit of 3 if we chose to do that, or whatever number we agreed
You
on.
set it as a minimum, which is state law, right?
Right.
You don't need to say 3.
No, we do need to say.
Why?
Well, right.
If you look at de facto, they're 2,000 feet apart.
Yeah.
They're not going to be more than,
Yeah, we don't actually have to set a specific.
No, and I don't think we have, based on the other parameters of the zoning bylaw here, the practicality of there being more than 3 is not very likely.
Right.
So,
Yeah, either
But-
related to the number of liquor stores or the zoning
Or the zoning.
possibilities.
So what are people suggesting?
what are we suggesting?
Yeah.
I'm hearing that you're saying to keep it as is, actually, and to
No.
keep it to
No,
not.
no,
I'm-
no.
Well,
You've
but
turned, the state law's turned completely upside down.
Yeah,
Well, but
the way this
if
is
if you say so if you can go as low as 20%, do you want to say it that way in here? Because right now it's exceed.
Yeah, you will have a minimum of 20% is what the state law is saying.
Well, you can't go below
You
20.
you can't go below
that.
20.
No,
Can't
so
go
we're
below
not,
20%,
it's not
but
any
that's
lower
the
than
floor
that.
that's set by the state.
But-
So we've voted yes as a town, and now we're subject to the state law that says we cannot go below 20% effectively. So now,
But we've basically,
Right.
we've said we won't exceed 20%.
we're saying we won't exceed 20%, I think.
Because that's as low as we can go right now.
Because that's what?
But
That's
that's
as-
as low as we can
Right.
go, but I think there's some appetite. I think the discussion here is that we would like to exceed 20% and add for the possibility of a third location if every other criteria that's involved beyond the special permit process is met, and whether that's practical or can happen in reality, and that goes beyond zoning, that goes as far as Board of Health and selectmen and law enforcement controls.
Right.
I think certainly allowing for the possibility at least is reasonable.
wouldn't agree with that.
I mean, you could also, per, Doug Himes' memo, you could also not do anything. And the option would be for the town to decide to limit it further through a ballot initiative. And that's sort of the alternative here.
Or was the intention really to limit it to a greater extent than state law in the proposed bylaw?
No, it was at 20% because that's what the study committee had talked about. We didn't talk about anything lower than that. We also didn't necessarily talk about anything higher than that. We realized that I think it's just about retail operations and it's not including the RMDs unless it's co-located, and it wouldn't include any other marijuana establishment. I think that we recognized as a group that we already have, there's significant buffer. There's the density buffer as well as the buffer around other land uses, and that it's unlikely that we would have as many. So I don't think we put a number in there for that reason, but and Sarah's also here, so may have
I don't remember any discussion about that at all.
I think
we talked about the cap.
Okay.
We did. We talked about that as an individual item, as a way to, how do we address the possibilities?
Well, I don't remember any.
Well, what if we just strike it? Why don't we just strike the whole paragraph and just refer back to the state law?
Well, that leaves us where we are, where we would default to the state floor. So
Yeah.
we couldn't have, we would be back to 2 at that point.
No, you could have more than 2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it won't be more than 2. But it won't, because it's the other regulations that have in here. I mean, it just won't.
What happened based on the...
I think we're overthinking this right now, and I think if we just strike this whole thing out, refer back to the state, and we have our buffer zones, we have our criteria that we worked hard on. I think the community worked really hard on this. I think it's good, and so leave it at that.
So I would be okay in striking the number if we don't want to have any upper limit on the number. But if we do want to have an upper limit, then I think we need to leave it in and just pick the upper limit.
But you'll never have that one.
If you look at these buffers, I'm not sure
I
you
know.
actually could mathematically have 3 more than 2.
No,
I
and
think
you
you
also
can
have to
have
consider where they're allowed based on these buffers that are being proposed here. You also have to consider the actual condition of the buildings that are in these various
Well, then we
And
should,
how far apart
and how far apart they are.
then we should just strike C altogether, as Ken suggested, and then we're just subject to the state law, which
That's my
means we'd have to
recommendation.
issue at least 2, and we could issue more.
Well, we have to make at least
We have to make 2 available.
Available.
Correct.
We're not forced to have 2.
Right, we're not forced,
Yeah,
but we
we
can't.
can't prevent less than
Correct,
2.
correct. So let's just strike it then.
And then I think you make your argument in town meeting that the regulations that are set up so brilliantly actually probably allow you to have 2, maybe not more than 2.
Well, that's the thing. Do you want to have that to say to town meeting, or do you want to say instead,
No,
we're putting a cap of 3, but we don't think there'll be more than 2?
no, I don't. I think it's where Kid's right. It
Okay.
should come out of the way you buffered it and the distances between the 2, which is 2,000 feet.
Right.
I haven't done the actual thing, but I think my gut tells me you're not going to get more than
That's
2,000 feet.
feet.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
2,000.
Yeah, I just think if you're driving up and down the main commercial corridors of town, which are really where these would go, you're not going to see a building that's really suitable for.
But also just to lengthen
Well,
and
just
2,000 feet plus the buffer.
Just to go back to your, before, what happened, no, they can't do that. Okay, I'm fine. Let's strike it.
So we're in agreement. to
Well,
strike
could we
that.
just
Yeah.
see, did the study group have any other thoughts on this?
I mean, I think it was something that was discussed in a little detail, particularly because we are a little bit of a beacon as a yes town, and all of our surrounding towns are no towns, so we're going to become attractive, which on the one hand is great for the town in terms
Sorry,
of
what does that mean?
income.
That town, that other
So we
towns
voted
voted
yes to
no.
have recreational marijuana, whereas whereas the majority of towns surrounding us are all no towns, so they voted no, so they will have no recreational marijuana establishments. So we're sitting a little bit as a beacon. So there was the discussion about, on the one hand, balancing out having the extra traffic coming into town. On the other hand, recognising that there is the potential of risk to youth, and how we can balance the two out to make sure that it's a successful proposition for any business that comes to town, but we're not overrun with these establishments everywhere.
So what that says to me is maybe we should say 3.
I think we should say 3.
Because that's, with the buffer and zoning, saying 3 is like the belt and suspenders, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we should say 3 in for that reason.
So then taking
To
out,
have something to take to town meeting.
taking out 20%
And I think we
and just say 3.
The maximum 3.
Right.
I'll go with that, because that's what's going to happen anyway.
I think
That's
that
a
makes
good thing
sense.
to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if we allow for 3, the reality of what's possible is probably not what 3.
And I'm also going to delete as rounded up.
Correct.
Just
No,
gonna
all
add
you need
there.
to do is say, shall not grant a special permit if doing so would result in the total number of marijuana retail licenses to exceed 3.
Period.
Yeah,
Period.
3, period,
End of
yeah.
sentence. That's it.
Um,
And get rid of all the
Yeah,
rest.
everything else can go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it.
But I do want to address,
Yeah.
if we're done with
I
that,
had one other.
go ahead.
The industrial zone.
That's where I was going.
I think Mr. Loretti's right.
I agree. Yeah, I think
I do as well.
we pull that out
Yeah,
of
I
that
agree.
section.
Although, I again would like to just ask, was there a specific intention on the part of the study group or anyone else for adding that?
I'm more interested in saying, if we take it out, are there still places to
Right.
go through?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, and that was the intention of putting it in, was
So,
to add business districts and to also investigate what the options would be with the industrial zone. You can have retail, but it is limited in the industrial zone. It's not that you can't, it's discouraged. That's actually the language in the zoning bylaw. It's not that it's not allowed. What is not allowed in the industrial zone is residential. That is specifically not allowed when you're doing mixed use. But it's just simply,
You take it out.
yeah, once you remove that,
It takes up too much
again,
space.
once again, you
Well,
have very
that
limited
was my
space
question.
available.
So is,
who's the
don't
exact
question
word?
that mixed use is not allowed in industrial zone.
It is.
It is, because
But
you can't
not
have
with
residential.
residential.
Which,
Okay, so mixed use is allowed, so
Yeah.
why not? Is
It's-
marijuana allowed?
Well, because this is.
In a mixed use, is it in the mixed uses?
it's been our
It
policy.
has to be, doesn't it? Because it's going to end up there.
It's
Yeah.
discouraged. That's the only word that's used in the zoning bylaw, in industrial zones. Retail is discouraged from
But I'm talking about in mixed use.
in mixed use, in general.
Oh,
In
oh.
general, retail is discouraged in industrial zones. That is what it
In the
says.
mixed use in industrial zone.
No, in general.
Get rid of
In
mixed
general,
use.
not about mixed use. The only thing about mixed use is residential cannot be done. If you're putting mixed use in the industrial zone, you cannot have residential. In general, though, the way that it's described, and you can go to the zoning bylaw to see how it's described for industrial districts, is that you cannot, it's discouraged to have any retail. But it doesn't mean that it's not allowed. It's simply discouraged. That is the word. So which means that if somebody is coming to this board for a special permit in an industrial zone, while it is discouraged, it could be allowed to have retail as part of mixed use. It's now that, and the conversation via email with, that we were having earlier with Mr. Loretti and Mr. Heim was that what was the intention of that in the 2016 adoption of mixed-use zoning, there actually had not been a specific reference about retail in industrial zones. It was about residential.
Residential is not allowed in,
In industrial
Residential
zones.
is not allowed.
Yeah, but we're obviously not talking about that.
Yeah.
The intent here was
Mixed use is
to,
allowed in industrial zone.
no.
residential is not allowed in industrial zones.
So it says in this district, the town discourages, as far as industrial.
Discourages.
industrial district. The town discourages residential uses, retail business uses, or uses which would otherwise interfere with the intent of this bylaw. Mixed-use development is allowed without a residential space.
Okay.
So that's what you can do in an industrial
So
zone.
mixed use is
So,
allowed,
Mixed use is allowed.
and mixed use includes retail.
But by
Would
the,
include retail.
but it would have to be mixed use because by the chart, just pure retail is not.
Right.
But other types of retail are by special
So,
permit.
if you-
Manufactured goods are. So if you have in the industrial zone, manufacturing of goods
Yep.
with retail, that would be allowed
That's true.
Right, and
Yes,
since-
by special permit.
by special, well, and all of this
Well,
is
by-
by special
By
permit.
right, less than 1,000 feet, square
So
feet,
is
by special permit.
our recreational marijuana, is that in,
Is what we're proposing.
yeah, but is it in retail and mixed use? What use is it?
It's just under retail.
It's its
We're
own
actually,
use.
we're adding a new, under retail, we're adding a new use called marijuana
Okay, so
retail.
then therefore it's allowed in a mixed
Therefore, it would be
use.
allowed.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
We're proposing something new.
Yeah.
so we don't have to change anything because
I don't think so.
it's going to come to us, it's in an industrial area, which will be filed for special permit for mixed use in an industrial area,
Correct.
and therefore it's allowed.
So the real problem is if we don't permit it
Mhm.
in the industrial districts, then,
Then we'll override the mixed use.
well, then we have many fewer places in town where it's possible, and
Yeah.
we may effectively zone it out.
I'm saying it's already allowed by the logic we just went through. You can do mixed use in an industrial zone, right? Mixed use,
It would,
Correct.
well,
you can, and it includes retail
yeah,
and marijuana.
but.
Well, you would
but-
also
but
have to meet- you
pure-
would also have to
But
meet-
pure, just a marijuana retailer that's not doing any kind of manufacturing or other production would,
So what's the criteria for mixed use in an industrial zone?
For specifically what?
They're coming for an application for mixed use in an industrial zone. They basically just want to put medical marijuana in it. That's all right, recreational marijuana. What would they have to say in a mixed use application that they're providing in industrial, office? So they really wouldn't,
I mean, you could make it so that it is only if it's only retail when it also includes, what's the other type of thing? Marijuana production.
No, but Andy's correct, it could be office.
It could also be an office,
It- it-
yeah. It
mixed
could be
use.
the research.
It could be office and retail, and that's the
Well,
mixed use.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know where I'm going with
Yeah.
that.
But then I think you,
Maybe not productive.
I think at that point, what you would have
I'm just looking
is,
at what we're proposing,
is
sorry.
if you're proposing a mixed-use building in an industrial zone, you're not
Right.
necessarily going to have it specifically with a tenant ready and lined up to go. That would be a retail marijuana site.
So
You
in a
would just
way-
have a retail site. You might have a bookstore or a Gap in there.
So it kind of won't happen that way.
Right.
It won't happen that way.
It won't happen that way. And again, it would have to be, if it were just a retail location being done by special permit, it would have to go through every other part of the process
Right.
before a special permit is granted, where it would have to meet the concerns of the law enforcement agencies in town, the Board of Health, and the Selectmen, and it would have to have all applicable security requirements and ingress and egress to the site itself, right, that we looked at and we discussed Water Street. So I don't think it's not like it's a slam dunk to have it in there. So I think going back on where I thought here, I think allowing it in industrial is fine because there are so many other controls on how to get one of those in and in place.
So the original intent of including industrial zones was because we're limited already. And so one other point that was raised the other on Monday night was why not the PUD and the multi-use? I suppose you could include those as well, but multi-use district, as you know, is very small, and PUD is also limited. There's really only one PUD.
Yeah, I would throw that thought. I was the one who raised it.
Yeah, we did look into it. So, I mean, if we looked at the uses that are currently allowed there, and a couple of these, you could technically say that, but
Wouldn't those require a large amount of residential
they are
anyway?
basically large-scale development,
And
which
that
is
would-
why we didn't.
That would
have
almost
So-
not work.
So, I mean, I reversed what I said before. I think we should leave
Okay,
the
so we'll leave
industrial
that
for a
in.
couple of reasons. One is, I think we needed to make sure that we have enough places, but also in reading the bylaw, it doesn't actually prohibit it, it just discourages them. So this would just make it clear that they need a special permit from us.
I think,
Which otherwise,
retail
they
is,
would not. So I think we needed to control
yeah,
it.
retail is allowed, it's
Yes,
just
correct.
discouraged.
Right, just-
Maybe,
But
So I
that
think,
means in a
yes.
special permit, we could allow it.
we
So I
could,
Right,
we
so
could allow it by
I think we
special
should, I
permit.
think we should leave it in.
And I think the understanding is, it is discouraged, but as opposed to zoning it out, we've now given a potential facility another route to explore.
I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah, I think so. So we'll leave that in. Are there any other points that anyone on the board wants to discuss? Or should we move the issue
The
along?
PUD too. I don't even know where the PUDs are.
The main PUD is actually the Arlington 360.
Yeah,
That's your main PUD. The other one is near the Mugar property.
so that's fine, just leave that out.
Yeah,
So
they're
it's very
just-
special.
They're not gonna,
No, because Mugar's in a residential area.
yeah,
That won't work.
Right.
no, it wouldn't work at all.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Sorry, and
No, it's fine.
So,
pure retail.
if we're in a wrapping up mode, what we normally do is I put together our draft report with the draft vote, and then you look at that to vote on, and we could do that. We also proposed meeting again next week before the 19th, which is technically your next formal meeting. The 19th is cutting it a little close for me in terms of getting that report out to town meeting members. We also actually haven't had a ton of participation from town meeting members, so I'd like to give enough time as possible for people to review the report. So I'm wondering if I can prepare the draft report for us to meet next week with all of this included in it, the actual vote.
Next Monday, or are you suggesting next?
Oh, well, Monday's
Monday
a
is-
holiday. I was going to suggest Tuesday, actually, Wednesday night and Thursday night.
Whatever's not, Tuesday's okay.
Tuesday night.
Tuesday, the 20th?
Tuesday will be
No,
13th.
The
Tuesday,
13th.
Yeah, that's fine.
Could we do that?
So we'll continue this tonight.
I think we would, either way, I'm just telling you that I would still need everybody to vote on the report.
On Tuesday or today?
Tuesday, I don't have the report.
We have to
today.
have the report and have it out for
Oh, I
48
see.
hours.
So you're saying we could vote on both? No.
Yeah, vote on both on Tuesday.
I think I would prefer to vote on this tonight and vote on the report Tuesday.
We've done it before, we
Either way.
vote on it, but if there are little administrative tweaks that can often happen.
Yeah, the only thing
they
that
just get done.
that we're not seeing tonight that I have to change in here, everything is here except for the language that I just don't have from Jean. I have it, I just don't have it in here. So that's the only modification I need to make.
What's that?
Voting on it tonight?
Yeah, I'm okay. If we're voting with all the changes, we.
Okay,
We'll vote as amended, and then we can,
then you'll deal with the report separately.
we'll deal with the report separately.
Okay.
So we're not having a meeting next Tuesday?
No. Do you, or do you just want to talk about the report on the 19th?
The 19th.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
It's just,
so we're not
Is that
doing
okay
next
with you?
it's okay with me, no, it was more just giving town meeting members time with the report before town meeting, special town meeting starts on December 5th. David, actually, there's 2 town meeting members in the room, I believe. So, is that enough time?
Sorry, go ahead.
December 5th
Between the
is,
19th and the 5th,
well, it would be more like the 20th or the 21st.
that's still 2 weeks.
And it's not that long.
No, I know, but
It
hasn't really been on
honestly,
the
I
radar.
think 2 weeks is sufficient time. I can't
Okay.
imagine too many of the town meeting members are going to want to look at anything
Okay.
that much earlier.
The only concern is it's 2 weeks, but it's really 1 week because of the holiday.
Holiday.
That's true, I wasn't thinking about that.
Yeah.
But it's not,
It's only one page, right?
it's not, well, it would be.
The report?
The report will be 7 or 8
Well,
meetings.
I mean, even post Thanksgiving,
Mhm.
there's a week and a half before special town meeting.
I'm perfectly happy to vote on the language tonight, vote on the report on the 19th, as long as it's not overburdening staff.
Yeah, no, it's not. That's fine. It was more, I was thinking about getting it to town meeting earlier.
No,
Okay.
it's
That was all.
2 weeks from now.
So, all right, so what I would propose is that we vote on the language of the bylaw amendment this evening, then we vote on the report on the 19th. We do not have an extra meeting in next week.
I'm okay with that.
All right.
Is there a way that the administrative stuff can get looked at by members so that
Oh, yeah, I
Oh,
can
yeah,
send you.
and we typically will do that where we'll vote on it,
Mhm.
as long as we're not making any substantive changes or changing anything outside of what the warrant says. If we're looking at typos and clerical errors.
Oh,
we
yeah,
can
this
get
is
those
all
after the
within,
fact.
this is all within scope.
Yeah.
We haven't done anything else.
We're not making any changes like deciding to put back 20% language or move industrial districts. Once we vote on that, we're locked in, but we're, at least until we get to town meeting, but I think I'm okay with that. I think that's reasonable. Fair, we've discussed it, there's been comment, opportunity for comment.
You'd be voting on this, these bylaw amendments as amended, recommending it to special town meeting on December 5th. And it's Article 2.
Okay.
And I so move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. That public hearing is now closed. Thank you all for coming and providing input. We do have some additional business to discuss this evening, so please be quiet as you leave the room. At least as quiet as you can. Dr. Augert, thank you for your participation.
Signs? Jeremiah?
Oh, okay. We're way behind schedule. So
This would be fast.
let's talk about signs. Sign bylaw amendments.
We, we've talked, this is just kind of a quick check-in about things. We had a community workshop on October 29th at Audison Middle School. About maybe 12 people attended. A number of people from the master plan, from the zoning bylaw working group rather, and then various residents. No business owners, unfortunately. And I've given to you just sort of a summary of what happened at that meeting, so you have it for your own reference. I also have the presentation, but I only have one copy with me. It's posted on the town's website. If you're interested, I'll just hand it over. We've had, I would say that the greatest feedback we've received so far is through the interviews that we've been doing with stakeholders. Mostly what I wanted to ask tonight is that if you haven't already had an interview with Erin or Allie, I think that one of them has been in touch. Hopefully you will take that opportunity to get interviewed by them, because we're trying to wrap up this portion of the analysis, and would love, to make sure that we capture individual board members' feedback on the way the existing sign bylaw is working or not working. Probably by the December, I think it's December 17th is the meeting, is when I'll be able to come to you with the that check-in point with the what the analysis will say about the sign bylaw, including our recommendations. That would be before it goes anywhere else. You wanted to have that checkpoint in the process. So this was mostly just an update to you to let you know where things are at. We have a forum. We've been interviewing people. If you haven't already had an interview, please feel free to follow up.
Yeah,
If you don't have time for an interview, also you can send me comments. I'm also happy to take that.
Yeah, I haven't had time to do that because I was out of the country for 10 days.
Yeah, you can just get in touch with Erin and she'll schedule a time. So, okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so moving on to the 2019 meeting schedule.
So I posted a draft proposed meeting schedule, but now I think, Jean, you might have had a comment about the meeting schedule.
Well, you know what? I changed my schedule. So I looked at this and I said, my God, as of now, I can make every one of these meetings, so things always change.
Yeah, I generally don't have any conflicts, so this is good to have in front of me.
I have 2 possible and 1 definite conflict.
Is it around somewhere where you print out, or where is it?
That is on the town's website. So if you go to the zoning bylaw working group, it's actually a sub-page of the master plan implementation committee page. You can find all of the materials on the sign, from the sign bylaw
Is this
process.
like a draft of the eventual sign regulations?
No, that was just like that was just to prompt discussion at the community workshop.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it was just like so there's things in there that are just prompts.
Okay.
So yeah, I just want to post the schedule and just wonder, and any of you might have a conflict any night, so we can kind of deal with that when it happens, but this works around a lot of different, Monday holidays. It also, I've populated it so that we factor in annual town meeting, which would start on April 22nd, and the warrant for annual town meeting, which we would need to do by January 28th.
Okay.
And then looking ahead to the fall, where we'll probably have a special town meeting. Got all our meetings.
So April 22nd is one of the question marks I have.
Oh, that's when that technically would be when annual town meeting would start, or the week after. Yeah. Usually it's the last Monday of the month, but I saw something that said potentially April 22nd, so I was trying to be aligned with that. The week before that, I think, is school vacation week.
That's usually how it works. Do we need to vote on this, or can we just?
I need you to vote on it so that I can post it.
Okay.
But you can change it.
It's always subject to change, yeah.
Okay.
And then I guess the only other thing, now that I think about it, is just, we've been doing the 7:30 p.m. thing for about a year now. We used to meet at 7. Do you want to keep it 7:30? Or, I'm just checking in about it. It was always at 7, like previously, but then we changed it.
Actually, it was 7:30.
Oh, it was?
Previously.
And then it went to 7?
Then it went to 7, then it
No,
went
it was
back.
7 for a long time.
Okay.
Changed to 7.
No, it was always 7.
Yeah,
7.
we recently changed it to 7:30, so I just want to check in, like, we can also change that back.
I like 7:30 because it allows me to have dinner, or if I'm running late from work.
I like 7 because we'd be done by now.
All right, well, I'll go with whatever.
I don't have a preference.
I don't have a
I don't
7:30
have
is
a
fine.
strong preference.
Yeah. Okay,
All
I
right,
just
leave it
wanted
at
to check in
7:30,
on
and
it.
if we
So we have
decide.
7:30 preference, so you win.
Thank you.
Okay.
I like 7.
Well, we do have to elect a new chair in January. It's an executive session.
It's fine, it's fine.
All right, so,
Because you've been really efficient with the,
So
your
do we need
general
a
schedule.
motion to adopt the 2019 meeting schedule as provided?
you just
So
made one.
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. We have,
I handed out meeting minutes
yeah.
tonight. I realize that's asking a lot, but they are from September 17th. I can jog your memory when we talked about Adventure Pub.
Could you hand it over?
I handed them out. It's 2 pages.
I have an extra copy for some reason.
Yeah, so you must have those copy. All right, take 2 seconds to look at them. Let's see, Mr. Brown, with the chair.
Yep.
So, paragraph beginning, Andrew, I would just change to the chair
I cut
for
off
discussion.
these.
The second one, a couple lines down.
Let me know if you found it, Jenny. I was just sort of typing.
Seems fine to me.
Yeah.
No comments.
I don't have any comments.
Just the two changes where
Yeah, where your name is. Yeah.
Move to accept the minutes of September 17th.
As amended.
2018.
As amended.
As amended.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we can move to adjourn.
motion adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.